The unopened box. It was a cold morning in Toronto. Gray clouds hung low over the skyline, and the streets were wet from the night's quiet rain. Keanu Reeves sat on the edge of his old wooden chair in the living room of a house he hadn't visited in years. It was his mother's house, small, filled with memories, and now silent. She had passed away 3 weeks ago. The funeral was simple, no cameras, no reporters, just a few close friends, a priest and Keanu, who didn't say a word. He stood still by the grave, hands in his coat pockets, eyes locked on the fresh dirt. After the funeral, he had avoided coming back, but now the lawyer had called. There was a box, not a will, not a bank document, just a box. His mother had left instructions. "This is only for Keanu. Open it alone. Do not ask questions until you finish what's inside." That sentence had been on his mind since the call. Now the box sat on the table in front of him. It was old. The cardboard edges had turned soft with time. A red string tied it shut. His fingers hovered above it for a moment before he gently pulled the string loose. He opened the box slowly. Inside were papers, photographs, and a small wooden envelope with a wax seal. It smelled like old perfume and cedarwood. The first thing he saw was a letter, handwritten. It started like this: "My dearest Keanu, if you are reading this, I'm no longer in this world, but I've left behind truths that were never easy to say out loud. You deserve to know them now, not before, not during, only now." His heart tightened. He hadn't cried at the funeral, not at the hospital, not even when he saw her empty chair in the kitchen. But something about her handwriting brought a sting to his eyes. He turned the page. "Before you became the man the world sees, you were a child who wanted to be loved. I know I wasn't always present. I know my choices left wounds. But there were reasons. Reasons I never dared to tell you." Keanu sat back, his breath held. He remembered the nights when he waited for her to come home, hours past dinner. He remembered how she smiled to cover her tired eyes, always saying, "Mommy's just busy, baby." Now those nights came back with weight. Beneath the letter was a photograph. It was black and white, faded. A young woman, his mother, standing next to a man he had never seen before. The man had dark eyes, strong shoulders, and a hand gently placed on her belly. She was pregnant in the picture. He flipped it over. On the back, in her handwriting, "This was taken a month before you were born." He stared at the man. Was that his father? But he knew his father. Or at least, the man he was told was his father. This was someone else. He kept reading. "The man in that picture is not the one you called Dad. I lied, Keanu. And I lived with that lie every single day. Your real father died before you were born. He was a kind man, but he had secrets. Secrets that led to choices. Choices I'll explain soon." Keanu placed the photo down with shaking fingers. This wasn't just a box. It was a doorway. Everything he thought he knew about his childhood, his family, was now full of cracks. He looked at the next envelope in the box. It had no name, no label, just soft folds and a scent that reminded him of his mother's coat. He opened it. Inside was a key, old, bronze, and cold to the touch. Attached to it was a small paper tag. Cabin. Truth. He leaned back in the chair. Cabin? He remembered a cabin vaguely, a place they went once. He was maybe 7, surrounded by woods, quiet, peaceful. They never went back after that summer. But why would she hide a key for it now? Why, after all? These years? He glanced at the rest of the box, but his mind was already racing. The key was calling him. And deep down, something told him that the box had only begun to speak. So he stood up, walked to the window, and stared at the sky that was turning dark again. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about family. It was about who he truly was. And he wasn't ready. but he had to go. The road to the cabin. The road was long, quiet, and lined with trees that whispered in the wind. Keanu Reeves sat behind the wheel of a black Jeep, driving north, away from the city, away from everything familiar. He hadn't told anyone where. He was going. No manager, no assistant, no friend. He had taken the key from the box, the photo of his real father, and the second letter. Everything else he left behind. He didn't need noise. He needed answers. The cabin was almost 4 hours away. He remembered only one thing about it. There was a lake nearby. As a boy, he had skipped stones across the water while his mother watched from the porch. He remembered her humming softly, a tune that had no words. He remembered laughing. But after that summer, they never returned. His mother never explained why. The second letter rested on the passenger seat, still unopened. It had his name on the front and nothing else. He was afraid to read it too soon. Something told him it would change things. Again, the road turned to gravel. The sound under the tires grew rough. Pine trees stretched high on both sides, their shadows reaching across the path like long fingers. Finally, the Jeep stopped in front of a rusty gate. A small wooden sign hung crooked from one of the posts. It read, Black Creek. Keanu stepped out, pulled the gate open with both hands, and slowly drove through. The path narrowed, leaves crunching beneath the wheels. Then he saw it. The cabin. It was exactly how he remembered it. Small, 2 windows in front, chimney leaning slightly to the left. Ivy had crept up the walls. Moss grew on the roof. Time had been here, and time had waited. He parked, turned off the engine, and sat still for a moment. The forest around him was quiet. No birds, no animals. Only the wind moving through trees. He took a deep breath, grabbed the key, and walked to the door. The key fit perfectly. The lock clicked. He stepped inside. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars. Old furniture covered in white sheets. A bookshelf with worn spines. A small fireplace, cold and full of ashes. Everything was still, untouched, like it had been waiting for him. He uncovered a chair and sat down. He finally opened the second letter. Keanu. It began. By the time you reach this place, you'll have questions. Questions I can no longer answer with my voice. But I have left behind something better. His words. Your father's words. His heartbeat quickened. Before he died, he recorded messages, not on a phone, not on a computer. This was before all that. He used tapes. You'll find them hidden in the floorboard under the rug in the bedroom. Listen carefully. Do not judge too quickly. And remember, what he did for love. Even if it doesn't seem like it. His hands began to shake. He folded the letter, stood, and walked to the bedroom. It smelled of cedar and thyme. The rug was still there, dark red with a pattern of birds. He pulled it back, revealing wooden planks beneath. One of them was loose. He pried it open and reached inside, a metal box. He lifted it out, set it on the bed, and opened it. Inside were cassette tapes, neatly stacked, each one labeled with a date. The earliest was from 1978. The last one was from 1980. Beneath the tapes was an old portable tape player. He checked the batteries. Dead. But there were extras in the box. He inserted the batteries, slid the first tape in, and pressed play. A soft static filled the room. Then a voice. Calm. Deep. Warm. Hello, son, it said. If you are hearing this, then I am gone, and you have found what I left behind. This is not a story of regret. It is a story of survival, truth, and love. And it begins before you were born. Keanu sat down on the edge of the bed, frozen. My name was Michael Yang. Your mother called me Mickey. I met her in 1977, in a small bookstore in Vancouver. She was reading a poem out loud to herself. "And I fell in love before." She finished the first line. The voice paused. "But I was not who I said I was. I was part of something. A program. Something secret. I was chosen for what they called the Compassion Initiative. I can't tell you all of it. Even now it's dangerous. But they believed kindness could change the world if done in silence, without fame, without name." Keanu leaned forward, his heart pounding. "They trained us to find people in pain, to enter their lives quietly, to lift them up, and then to leave without being known. Your mother was not part of the plan. She was never supposed to know me. But love does not follow rules. And you, Keanu, you were not planned by them. But you were my greatest gift." The voice cracked slightly, like it was holding back tears. "They gave me a choice. Leave her and the child, or they would make her disappear." Keanu's eyes burned. "I left, not because I wanted to, but because they made sure she would be safe only if I vanished. And I did. Forever." The tape ended with a click. Silence filled the room again. Keanu stared at the player, his hands on his knees. He felt like a boy again, lost, small, and yet something else. He felt fire in his chest. Not anger, not sadness. Something deeper. A knowing. His father had been forced to leave. Not because he didn't care, but because he did. He looked at the next tape. He pressed play. But before the voice came, a sound outside made him freeze. A crunch, a step. Someone was outside the cabin. He stood quickly, moved to the window and peered through the curtain. Nothing. Then another sound, closer. He stepped out, heart thumping. "Hello?" he called. Silence. Then, from the edge of the woods, a figure stepped forward. An old man, thin, tall, wearing a gray coat. A hat pulled low over his eyes. "You're Michael's boy," the man said calmly. Keanu's mouth went dry. "Who are you?" The man smiled gently. "Someone who owes you the truth, and the last piece of your father's story." The man from the trees. The man stood still under the tall pines. Sunlight pushed through the branches in thin beams, touching the ground in broken light. Keanu Reeves stared at him, heart racing, thoughts spinning. Something about the old man's voice felt strange, not threatening but heavy, like it had carried secrets for too long. "Who are you?" Keanu asked again, stepping closer. The man took off his hat. His hair was silver, short, clean. His face was thin, sharp around the eyes, but there was warmth behind his gaze. "My name is Joseph," he said. "I worked with your father." Keanu's breath caught. "You knew him?" Joseph nodded slowly. "More than most. We were part of the same group, the Compassion Initiative, the one your father told you about on the tape." Keanu stepped off the porch, walking toward him. "How did you find me?" "Your mother told me, years ago, that if you ever came here, if you ever found the key and opened the box, I should come too. She said you would need someone to help you understand the rest." Keanu's shoulders dropped slightly. "There's more." Joseph gave a small, sad smile. "There's always more, Keanu." They stood in silence for a moment, the air still around them. Birds had returned to the trees now. Life was slowly breathing again into the space. "Come inside," Keanu said finally. They sat in the living room. The tape player and tapes were still on the table. Joseph looked at them for a long time, then spoke softly. "Your father believed the world could change if ordinary people quietly did good things. Not for applause, not for recognition, just because it was right. The initiative trained men and women like us to help others in hidden ways." "How?" Keanu asked. "By becoming part of people's lives when they were most broken. By helping without them ever knowing who we were. We were never supposed to leave names, never stay. It was hard, harder than you can imagine. Keanu leaned forward. So why did my father break the rule? Joseph smiled gently. Because of you. Because love is stronger than any training. He loved your mother. And when he knew she was pregnant, he made a choice. He risked everything to be with her. But then, he stopped, his eyes distant. Then they gave him an ultimatum. Leave her or lose her. And he believed leaving was the only way to protect you both. Keanu clenched his jaw. They had that much power, yes. We were part of something tied to governments, to secret funds, to ideas that sounded beautiful, but sometimes became dangerous. Your father tried to step out. They wouldn't allow it. They made it look like he had died. Keanu's hands tightened on his knees. Did he really die? Joseph nodded. He tried to fight back. He went to people who could expose the truth, but it didn't go as planned. He died in a car crash in 1980, at least that's what we were told. No body was returned, no funeral, just a sealed file and silence. But how do you know he's really dead? Keanu asked, his voice suddenly louder. Joseph looked up slowly. I don't. A deep silence filled the cabin. Keanu sat back. The room felt smaller now, tighter. The weight of everything was pressing on him. There's one more thing, Joseph said. Your father left something behind, not just the tapes. Something else. Something he made for you. Keanu looked up. What is it? Joseph reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Yellowed by time. Sealed. He gave this to me before he vanished. He said, "One day when my son is ready, give him this." Keanu stared at it. His fingers reached slowly. He took the envelope, held it like it was made of glass. Read it when you're alone, Joseph said. Some truths need silence. Keanu nodded, eyes locked on the envelope. I'll go now, Joseph said. You know how to reach me if you need more answers. He stood, placed his hat back on his head, and walked to the door. Thank you, Keanu said softly. Joseph turned. Your father was the bravest man I ever knew. And you have more of him in you than you realize. Then he stepped outside, disappearing into the trees the same way he had come. Keanu sat alone in the cabin, the envelope still in his hand. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. Dear Keanu, if you are reading this, it means you made it. You were brave enough to open the box, brave enough to face the truth. And now there is one more thing I must ask of you. Not to forgive me, but to continue what I started. I have hidden something in this cabin. Not money, not gold. Something more powerful, kindness. It is written in journals, stories of the people I helped, details of what worked and what failed. It may help others, but only if shared the right way. I was once told the world needs more silent heroes, but maybe the world also needs one who can speak. You can be that voice, not just in films, but in real life. You don't have to. It's your choice. But if you're willing, you'll know where to begin. With love, your father. Keanu sat still. The wind moved outside. He stood, walked back to the bedroom, and looked beneath the floor again. This time, he saw it. A second compartment. He lifted the board. Inside were old notebooks, thick, filled with pages, and at the top of the first one, written in clean ink, acts of invisible kindness. He opened the first page and began to read. Acts of invisible kindness. The first page was simple. It held a short sentence, written in his father's careful handwriting. Kindness is not an act. It is a way of being, especially when no one sees you do it. Keanu Reeves sat on the floor of the bedroom, the notebook resting on his lap. The paper smelled like time. The ink was faded in some places, but every word felt alive. This was no ordinary journal. It was a record of missions, encounters, and small moments that had changed lives, quietly, secretly. He turned the page. The first entry was dated August 4th, 1977. Met a man today who had lost everything. His name was Elliot. Worked in a small mechanic shop outside Calgary. He was about to end his life. I walked in pretending my car broke down, listened to him talk while pretending to wait for a tow. Told him he reminded me of someone who had saved my life. It gave him something. Hope, maybe. When I left, I paid for a fake repair and left a letter in his drawer that said, "You matter more than you know." 2 years later, he opened a community garage that helps veterans for free. Never knew my name. Keanu closed his eyes. Goosebumps crawled across his skin. This was the kind of work his father had done. Not with power, not with weapons, but with words, presence, honesty. He turned more pages. Each one held a story. A woman in a hospital who hadn't spoken in weeks. A boy who had stopped going to school. A teacher ready to quit. A store owner struggling with grief. His father had entered their lives quietly and left pieces of himself behind without ever asking for thanks. As Keanu kept reading, he noticed something else. Small drawings in the margins, sketches of places, symbols. Sometimes just a single word circled twice, like listen or wait or trust. On the 15th page, Keanu found something that made him stop. His own name. July 9th, 1980. Keanu turned 6 today. I couldn't be there. I watched from a distance, standing across the street, hiding behind a parked car. He laughed while holding a balloon. His mother looked tired but happy. I wanted to run to them, hold them, tell them everything, but I couldn't. If they saw me, others would too, and they would take everything. The page shook in Keanu's hands. Tears filled his eyes. His father had been watching. He had never left him completely. He had just been protecting him from the shadows. Keanu sat still for a long time, notebook resting open on his knees. Outside, the sky was growing dark. Wind moved through the trees again. But inside the cabin, something had changed. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't confused. He was beginning to understand. His father had made a choice. To live a life that mattered. Not to the world, but to individuals who needed it most. And now, he had passed that life on to him. But what was Keanu supposed to do now? He stood and carried the journals into the living room. There were 6 of them in total, each one filled with years of work. Real stories, real people, real moments. He picked up the tape player again and inserted the next cassette. His father's voice returned. Gentle, steady. If you've found the journals, then you know. I wasn't a spy. I wasn't a hero in the way movies show. I was just a man who believed in presence, in listening, in showing up when no one else would. It's not an easy path. It can feel lonely. But it saves more lives than you can count. And now, my son, I leave the rest to you. You've already lived your life with kindness, even when the world pushed you down. I've seen it. Others have too. But there's more you can do, if you choose. The tape clicked off. Keanu sat down and stared at the firewood in the fireplace. It had been cold for years. He placed some dry logs inside, lit a match, and watched. As the flame took shape, he looked at the journals. He looked at the photo of his mother and father. And then he spoke softly to himself. I choose. The next morning, Keanu left the cabin and drove to the nearest town. It was small, quiet, just a few shops and a diner. He walked inside and sat at the counter. A young woman served him coffee. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the cup down. Thank you, he said gently. She nodded but didn't speak. Keanu noticed the bruises on her wrist. Her eyes held pain, the kind he had seen in the journal stories. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push. He just listened. He stayed in that town for 2 days, not as a celebrity, not as an actor, just as a man. He helped an old man with his groceries, played piano in the diner when the owner said theirs was broken. He spoke with a boy outside a school who said he had no friends. And when he left, he quietly paid for the waitress's rent through a cashier friend without ever using his name. He returned to the cabin that night, and he wrote his first journal entry, June 10th, 2025. Today I started where my father ended. Not because I want to be remembered, but because someone needs to continue. Kindness does not retire. It only waits for the next hand to carry it forward. He signed the bottom with one word, K. Outside, the moon was full. The wind moved gently across the water, and inside the cabin, the flame burned brighter than before. The silent mission Keanu Reeves woke before sunrise. The light was barely touching the trees outside the cabin, and the world was quiet. No traffic, no voices, no schedule. Only the soft hum of nature waking slowly. He poured himself a cup of warm tea, sat by the window, and opened his father's journal again. His fingers ran gently across the pages, as if feeling the weight of every story written there. He had already begun adding his own. The journal was no longer just a record of the past. It was becoming a bridge, a quiet mission passed from one man to another. But now, Keanu knew the work couldn't stay hidden in the woods. He needed to take it with him, not in the spotlight, not for applause, but for the people in corners of the world no one noticed. People like the waitress at the diner, like the boy outside the school, like he once was. A child waiting at the window for a mother who came home late, never knowing why her eyes looked so tired. He cleaned the cabin, folded the old sheets, closed the notebooks and placed them in a brown leather bag. He stood by the fireplace one last time and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Then he locked the cabin door and drove away, with no plan except one, to go where kindness was needed and to keep going until his heart told him to stop. His first stop was a city just an hour away, not for a film shoot, not for an interview, but because he'd heard about a center there, a place for people who had lost everything. It was run by volunteers who barely had enough to keep it open. They provided warm meals, clean clothes, and a place to sleep. No questions, no judgment. Keanu walked in wearing a plain black hoodie, jeans, and an old cap. No one recognized him. He liked it that way. He offered to help in the kitchen. They said yes. He chopped vegetables, scrubbed pots, cleaned floors. He didn't talk much. He just smiled, listened, showed up. On the third day, an old man sat beside him on a bench outside the shelter. His clothes were torn, but his eyes were sharp. "You don't belong here," the man said. Keanu turned to him. "Why do you say that?" "Because you look like someone who's searching for something, not someone who's lost." Keanu smiled. "Maybe I'm both," the old man chuckled. "We all are." Then he said something Keanu would never forget. "You know, most people think being kind means doing something big. Buying gifts, saving lives. But sometimes, it's just sitting next to someone and letting them speak without being afraid." Keanu nodded. "What's your name?" "People call me preacher. But I'm no priest. I just listen." Preacher reached into his coat and handed Keanu a folded piece of paper. "Read this when you're alone. It's something I wrote when I had nothing but hope." Keanu took the paper and placed it in his jacket. That night, back in the small hotel room he'd rented, he opened it. The note said, "If pain is the language of the broken, then kindness is the voice that answers back. We are not healed by grand gestures, but by small moments that remind us we still matter." Keanu sat still, his eyes wet. He opened his journal and wrote a new entry. June 13th, 2025. Today, preacher reminded me why silence is sacred. Kindness doesn't need noise. It only needs presence. The next morning, Keanu left the center without saying goodbye, not because he didn't care, but because some kindness is better left as mystery. He kept moving, from city to city. He fixed a stranger's flat tire on a highway with no lights. He bought groceries for a mother who was counting coins at a checkout line. He helped a shy girl learn lines for her school play when he saw her crying outside a library each time. He left no name, only a feeling. Sometimes he left behind a note. Handwritten, simple words like, "You're not alone," or "You're stronger than today makes you feel." He signed them all with a single letter, K. But one day, in a town near the mountains, something unexpected happened. He helped an elderly woman cross the street during heavy rain. Her hands were cold, her eyes barely open. After they reached the sidewalk, she looked up at him and whispered, "You have his eyes." Keanu froze. "What?" "Michael," she said softly. "Your father. I knew him." His chest tightened. "How?" She smiled. "He helped my son once, long ago, when he was about to give up on life. Michael sat with him every day for a week, never asked for anything, just listened. Then one day he disappeared. But before he left, he gave my son a journal." Keanu's heart pounded. "Do you still have it?" "Yes," she said. "Come with me." Her home was small, full of photographs and old books. She pulled out a drawer, opened a cloth-wrapped package, and handed it to him. It was a copy of one of his father's journals. Same cover, same pages. But something was different. This one had an extra section at the back. He opened it. Inside was a letter addressed to my son, but not written by his father, written by a young man named Samuel. Her son. "Dear son of Michael, if you are reading this, it means his mission continues. I don't know your name. I only know that your father once changed my life by doing nothing more than showing up. He didn't fix me. He didn't save me. He simply made me believe I was worth saving. If you are his child, then you carry that same power. Do not let the world rush you. Walk slow. Love deep. And when you feel alone, know that you're never truly unseen. I still carry his words in my pocket. Now, I pass them to you." Keanu folded the letter and held it to his chest. His father had planted seeds, and now, years later, those seeds were blooming in people he'd never met. But something else stirred in Keanu's heart. A question. How many more people had his father touched? How many more stories were out there? And if so, how could he find them? Because maybe, just maybe, one of those stories could reveal the truth about his father's final days, whether he truly died, or if somewhere out there, he still lived in silence. The final letter. The sky was soft gray when Keanu Reeves stood once again in front of the cabin. Weeks had passed since he first opened the box. His mother left him. Weeks filled with quiet journeys, whispered stories, and acts of kindness that never made headlines. Each step had brought him closer, not just to his father's memory, but to something inside himself that he hadn't felt in years. Peace. But there was still one thread left unpulled, one question that remained. Was his father really gone, inside? The cabin, everything was the same. The smell of pine, the journals stacked neatly on the shelf, the fireplace now cold. But the silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt full, like the walls had listened to every word spoken here and were holding them gently. Keanu sat down by the window with a cup of tea. He reached into his bag and pulled out the folded letter given to him by Samuel's mother. He'd read it a dozen times. But now, something caught his eye. Tiny numbers written in pencil on the back corner of the paper. Coordinates. His breath caught. He unfolded a map and traced the numbers. It pointed to a small forest near the coast of British Columbia. Deep in the mountains, off-grid, unreachable by car. It would take a hike through rough terrain. His heart told him he had to go. 2 days later, Keanu stood at the edge of the trail, the cold air sharp against his skin. He carried only a backpack with a journal, water, and a flashlight. The forest swallowed the sound of the world behind him. Every step was slow, careful, purposeful. After 5 hours of walking, he found it. An old stone building, no bigger than a cottage, moss-covered roof, windows broken, a door made of heavy oak. He stepped inside. The room was nearly empty, except for a wooden desk, a chair, and a dusty shelf filled with files. He scanned the files. Names, dates, stories. It was a record, not of missions, but of outcomes. People who had been helped, followed quietly through time. It was proof that the Compassion Initiative had worked. But on the desk, there was something else. A single envelope, sealed in wax. His name was written on it, just one word. Keanu, his hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. My son, if this letter has found you, then you've walked a path that few have dared to follow. You've carried kindness through silence. You've reached into darkness with no need for light. And you've proven that compassion is not a weakness, it is strength in its purest form. I am alive, but not in the way you hope. By the time you read this, I may have already gone. But my voice lives in those journals. My soul lives in the hearts of every person I touched. And now, you carry me in you. You once asked why I left. Here is the truth. The people who ran the initiative grew afraid. Afraid that kindness was not enough. They wanted control. They wanted power. I refused, and they erased me. But before they did, I made sure to leave behind a legacy. One you've now discovered. You do not need to be famous to be remembered. You only need to matter to one person. And Keanu, you matter to more people than you know. Watched you become a man from afar. I saw your pain, your grief, your strength. I saw you give without asking, love without condition. And though we never stood face to face as father and son, my heart has always been with you. There is one more thing I must ask of you. Finish what I started, not with silence, but with truth. Tell the world what you've seen, not for fame, not for glory, but so others can remember that kindness does not die. It only waits for someone brave enough to carry it again. With all the love a father can give. Michael Yang. Keanu sat there for a long time, the letter resting in his lap. Tears falling quietly down his face. His father had never truly left him, not in spirit, not in legacy. And now, he understood his mission. He returned to the city. Quietly, slowly, and he began writing. Not a book, not a speech, but a film. Not about himself, not about fame, but about his father. About the Compassion Initiative. About the people who helped others without being known. He wrote it with honesty, pain, and heart. The film was simple. A man walks into a stranger's life, helps them, and disappears without leaving his name. Over and over, until the world begins to wonder. Who is this man? The film didn't win awards, but it started conversations. People began leaving notes for strangers, paying for someone else's meal, sending letters to loved ones they hadn't spoken to in years. They began signing them all with one letter. Canned slowly, quietly, the world began to change, not all at once, but in small corners where kindness grew like seeds left in the dark, finally finding the light. And Keanu Reeves kept walking, kept listening, kept helping, without asking for anything in return, because now, he knew, some boxes carry memories, some carry truths, and some, when opened, change not just how we see a man, but how we see ourselves.